Hello, hello, I'm Tracy Pierce. Thanks for joining me for this series of mini animal communications. So this series was really born out of what happened here in the United States around, March and April of 2020 here with the coronavirus pandemic. Everybody going into lockdown. I was going back and forth. I was house sitting at the time when things started shutting down, and I was driving between my house and this other person's house, and things just seemed and felt so different, and I wondered what the animals thought about this. And so I did a series of videos throughout March and April, talking to the animals, giving their perspective on what's happening. And since then, even though we're not still in lockdown now, my animal friends have encouraged me to make these videos and to continue to share their animal wisdom with the world. So today we're going to talk with a honeybee. Pull up the picture here. So we've talked to a lot of winged creatures in the last month or so. Sometimes a particular kind of animal will just continuously show up. Like for a while we had cats, and now we're having winged creatures. So this bee, this was taken at the end of April or so. So I know it's possible this bee is not actually living anymore. But if you're joining me live, if you're on Zoom, there should be a button on the bottom that says chat. And if you have any questions for this little honeybee that you would like to have answered, just type them in. But I'm just going to go ahead and get quiet and start tuning in to this little honeybee and see what it would like to tell us. Immediately I feel the buzzing of the bees, showing me a situation where maybe you've been around something like this before, like if there's a flowering tree or a flowering bush, how sometimes it seems like just all the bees kind of descend on that particular plant. And like if you listen, you can hear that buzzing noise that just kind of takes over the whole area. Is there something special about that buzzing or the frequency of it or something? It's in, yes, it is special. Can you tell me more about why? It's showing, it's almost like when there's a group of them, it's almost like it creates a bit of a force field. Is that right? Is that right? Yes. So like when the plants are ready to be pollinated, basically, it's showing that there's a particular, like sheen is the word I hear. Like there's a particular way that they see these plants that need to be pollinated. And it's almost like the vibration, that buzzing draws more awareness to the plant. I feel like there's a little bit more there. Could you say more? Well, the plant wants to be pollinated too. It's a mutually beneficial cycle. And so it's showing, yeah, there's this visual aspect of, yes, we see that the plant is ready to be pollinated. But when there are multiple bees around, it almost sends out this vibration even further than the visual aspect, like drawing the bees in, like this plant is ready. It's ready to be pollinated. Come and get it. We're open, like I see this, we're open for business kind of sign. Yes, because the bee is saying, yes, okay, we definitely get something from this experience. We're pollinating, we're bringing things back to our own hive to generate the honey that we need, but it's also beneficial for the plant, and we're aware of that, and we want that benefit to happen for the plant. And so it's almost like calling all the troops in to pollinate this particular area or plant or garden. Yeah, it's sort of like it's showing me sending up a like a smoke signal, like humans might think of a smoke signal. The way they do this vibration around plants is like sending out a smoke signal to other insects, other pollinators. So do you feel like it's important, or like that certain kinds of winged creatures, like your particular species of bee, pollinate certain kinds of plants, or does it matter as long as, you know, there's just a pollinator there to do it? So seeing some different plants are different, and um, there's a sense of like just about any kind of pollinator could pollinate any kind of plant. And sometimes that's what happens. Like it's showing me this situation of um, like where you see little wasps or different kinds of insects, and then you'll see like those giant bumblebees. Like we're all working together. Um, but it is showing me like there's this particular bush thing outside where I live now, and it seemed like there were a particular kind of, excuse me, pollinator that kept coming there. So like that bush here, was it really calling a particular kind of pollinator, or did it not matter? I guess I'm not totally clear there what you're saying. So certain plants do tend to draw certain kinds of pollinators. It's showing me like um, there's a different kind of smell actually to different kind of pollinators as to these different plants, and some pollinators are more drawn to certain kinds of plants. That's really interesting. I guess I hadn't thought about it like that before. So just checking our chat to see if we have any questions for you. I'm not seeing any come through right now. So I wonder if you have any particular messages for our viewers. You know, we've kind of talked a little bit about the environment and pollinating, but I wonder if there are any messages you really want the humans out there to know or understand about you. It's showing me flying very quickly from place to place. Like we work very, very hard. And it shows how it's like the bee is very different from other predator animals. In particular, it's showing like predators like mountain lions, how their days can be a lot of lounging around. Like if you watch nature shows about lions, you'll often see like they're hunting for this small chunk of the day, but then a lot of times they're just kind of lying around in the sun. The bee is saying we are very different from that kind of animal. Do you feel like you're more of a prey kind of animal then, or well, sure, we can be eaten, but we don't really consider ourselves prey. It's a different kind of predator rather than so what it's showing is like with a predator, like a proper predator, a lion or something, that when it goes after something, it takes its life. And the bee says we very much are predators in that way. Like, we're focused, we're going after the pollen, we're pollinating, we're focused on going after this thing. But when we get what we want, something doesn't have to die in order for that to happen. That's a big part of how we differ. But I also don't consider us necessarily a prey animal. Like, if you consider a predator something that's just going after what it wants, we're very focused in that way, but we're not the same as, we don't have to take life in order to get our sustenance or what we want. It becomes more of a, it's showing like a virtuous circle where nothing has to die, and the plants and the animals are kind of helping each other. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Okay, we have a question coming in. Can you describe more about how the plants communicate with you, little bee? So what it's showing, it's almost like if you read metaphysical books or something, how they might describe an aura of a person, but it's showing that it's like that with the plants. So it's like the plants have an aura, and it might be a particular color or vibration. This bee is saying, we don't see things, like physically see things in the same way that humans do. Like, it's almost like they can see these vibrations or colors in a different way than we do. So this honeybee is showing, he keeps showing me like this golden color surrounding plants. So is that golden color an indication that the plant is ready for harvest or ready to be pollinated? The bee says, yes, that's how I see it. It may not be kind of a universal thing, like not all bees see it as yellow the way I'm describing it, but they might see this particular vibration level, or they might see it as a color, but it is sort of this energetic indicator that things are ready, that it's time to be pollinated. Is there more of a communication with plants that you guys have? You know, it seems like, I know plants are alive too, and just because the majority of humans don't know how to communicate with them doesn't mean they're not communicating in some way. Are there other ways that you're communicating with the plants? So it's showing me these really sensitive areas at the end of its legs, and so it's almost like through touch. It's kind of making this comparison to humans where, like if somebody is really down or something, you might put your hand on their shoulder to comfort them. There's like a touch communication that happens, whether humans realize it or not, but there is this energetic exchange is what he's showing. And he's saying the same thing kind of happens with plants. It's really hard to put into words, but like when I put my foot on the plant, there's kind of an indicator of how well the plant is doing, or maybe the plant might indicate, take pollen from this bloom rather than that one. But there is kind of an exchange of information. It's sort of like a touch and a knowing rather than it being words that are exchanged. Wow. It's really, I kind of wish we had that a little bit more. So we've got a couple more questions coming in. How does the hive coordinate everything? So he's showing me again this thing about vibration. So it's showing that each different colony of bees, each different hive, it's almost like they have their own note or frequency, like on a piano, like choose middle C. Like this particular hive vibrates at middle C, and then this other hive vibrates at C sharp. He says that's not quite an exact analogy because our degrees are, so if here's C and here's C sharp, there's like 1,800 different little individual vibrations in between here and there. We're much more sensitive to particular vibrations, and that's how we find our way back to the hive, is we tune in to our, like if I'm middle C, I can tune in and like that vibration pulls me back to the hive. So is it like the queen bee or something is emitting signals or something on that particular frequency, or is there, how is it coordinated? So he's showing me this hive, and like I'm hearing the buzzing that and feeling that kind of vibration of the particular hive. He says, well, it's called hive mind for a reason. It's almost like everybody is plugged in. It's showing me like a line of sockets, electrical sockets, and everybody's plugged into a particular one, and it creates that buzzing. Is it like you guys get sent out on missions, or can you say more about how that vibration kind of directs what you're doing, how it coordinates things? So this is really difficult to translate into human words. What he's showing me is like, it's almost like these packets of information, but they're really, really packed. Like, it's almost like when they receive that packet or the information, it's so packed that it's like an instruction notice, or, but it's so packed, it's like passing a knowing rather than unpacking it into full words. Yeah, it's a connection about just knowing. Like, it's just sometimes like you might be in a situation and all of a sudden you just get this intuitional ping. It just feels like a ping, like you just know that's the right thing to do, but you maybe don't necessarily have the words to say why or how that is the right thing to do. It's kind of similar with us. We really communicate in a much more packed kind of form than humans do. We tend to think we think of humans as they kind of have this diarrhea mouth, kind of like blah, 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 blah thing that they do. Whereas like there's this precision and packedness in the information that's passed that doesn't need to be unpacked. We just understand and do it. Wow. I really get the sense of how that's working. It's really interesting. Okay, so we have another question here. What sense, like smell, taste, or feel, do you rely on the most, and why? So what it's showing is it doesn't rely on senses in the same way that humans do. It's showing how the like smell, taste, and feel, kind of like how I was talking, how they communicate with each other. It's very packed. So it's almost like all of the senses can be packed in together. So like if I touch something with my tongue and I'm tasting it and I'm touching it, there's a sense of all of those things happening at the same time. It's not just one or the other. Our senses are much less separated out than humans. again, it's showing that packedness, that compactness of receiving information. This bee says it feels like we insects are much more advanced in this kind of communication and this kind of sense assimilation. So it's showing like in some of the meditation or spiritual practices I have done, there gets to be, they call it like synesthesia, where maybe you're listening to sounds, but you get an impression of a color, or you're listening to sounds and you get the impression of something touching you. He says it's kind of the same thing where it's synesthesia, where I'm touching something, but I'm also hearing it and smelling it as I'm touching it. Wow. I kind of wish we humans could do that too. Like, do you feel like there's a way that we could learn how to do that? Or yeah, the bee's showing, humans have become so physical in their expression that they've kind of forgotten these energetic parts of themselves. Like, there's part of us humans that knows how to do all these things that the bee is describing. It's almost like we've just forgotten, and we've become so focused on the physical world that we break things down into, oh, what does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it sound like? Where the properties are really all together in this conglomerate that can be felt and seen all together. Wow, it's kind of mind-blowing, really. So my little friend Honeybee, we're kind of coming to the end of our time for today. I wonder if there's anything else you definitely want our viewers to know about you or your species, or any messages that you might want to pass before we close the space today. It's really glad that it's kind of weird, like that the environmental turmoil that we're experiencing has brought more attention to the flying pollinators, this bee says. Like, even though maybe people haven't quite grasped completely how important this really is, or the depth, but this showing like an upheaval, this churning of disaster has really brought a lot of attention to the pollinators, and he feels that that is a positive direction for things, for people to even be aware. He's showing me this memory of sometimes the animals read me to like show me things that make sense, what they're trying to show. And so my husband, he's showing me this memory. My husband, like when he was a little kid, they used to play this game of smashing bees. And, it came from something that happened with his mom earlier on or whatever. But this bee is saying, that was very much like a thought or an idea or a concept. Like, think of when you were little, Tracy, like trying to get the bees away from you. Like, there was this feeling that bees were dangerous or they were going to harm you in some way. But that's really kind of changed, and it's almost like a 180 where the public's view of bees has really changed, and this bee feels it's a positive that this has happened. So, all right, thank you, little bee. Go ahead and stop the share. All right, so thanks so much for joining me here today. These sessions have been super fun, and it's just really been a joy to bring the messages of the animals here to you guys. So I hope you continue to join us, and until next time, take care and be well.